Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts, Calvin Timms and Dale Terry. You can find us over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin and at Dynasty_Dale. And we are going through another offseason recap. This time we're going through the Cleveland Browns. If this is your first episode in, thank you guys for joining us and checking the video out. We're going through all 32 teams in the entire month of July. So if we haven't gotten to your team yet, it's going to be coming out some point in the next couple of weeks, but this is the second division. We've gone through the AFC East at this point in time. We're going through the AFC North right now, and then we'll be getting all the other teams here throughout the month. So that said, while you're here, if you can, like the video. It takes you about 10 seconds to go down and like the video. Leave a comment, leave some thoughts. If this is not your first one and you've seen a few other ones, if you have any feedback or any thoughts, just leave it down below. If this is your first one, let us know what you think of the video afterwards. That'd be really appreciated. We're going to be putting out so much content. It's crazy. It's so much. So we appreciate you guys checking it all out. And yeah, that said, we're going to get into it. Dale, how are we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing really good. I'm excited to talk about one of the best rosters in the NFL today. So,
interesting. We're talking about the
yep,
Kansas
that's going to be
City Chiefs?
Well, I'm actually talking about the Browns. Browns
Okay.
as an overall team.
All right.
I honestly think they have one of the best rosters. That doesn't mean much in in July, but
True.
it really doesn't. But if it holds up, it could be a very, very interesting January for them.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they can finally break that curse that's been going strong for the last couple of years. So if this is your first one, if it's not, you'll be accustomed to this little spiel right here. But the way that we do these, we're going to be going through the coaching changes first, then we're going to hit the free agents that they added, the free agents that they lost, and then covering the draft. And then at the end of the video, we'll be going through all the positional rankings and giving our thoughts on the skill players, quarterbacks, receivers, all those guys at the end. So make sure you stick around for that at the end. But jumping right into the coaching staff changes, they did lose their defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, right after the season, replaced him with Jim Schwartz from the Tennessee Titans. The defensive coordinator change, so I'm not going to lie to you, I don't really know. I'm not an IDP fanatic, so I don't know the impact that this is going to have on the defense. I do know that the Browns defense for the last couple of years has been mediocre at best with all the talent that they've had. So I don't really think that this is going to have I don't really know the impact that this is going to have. But on the offensive, in the dynasty side, which most of us are interested in, it's not really going to change too much in my opinion. Any crazy thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I don't mind Jim Schwartz. I thought he wasn't a horrible head coach with the Lions back in the early 2010s. And he's kind of bounced around. Like he was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles for one of their for their Super Bowl championship. So,
Right.
I mean he does have some pedigree, and I think anything to get this defense going. I know they have a very solid front seven, but their back four tend to get injured quite a bit, unfortunately,
Right.
and that's where you get eaten alive in the NFL. So
Yep. So some of the players that they added, they've got Chris Westry, cornerback Mike Ford. They added backup quarterback Joshua Dobbs from Tennessee. Don't know if there's a connection there with Jim Schwartz coming over from Tennessee or not. Added tight end Jordan Atkins. They added linebacker Matthew Adams. They added strong safety Rodney McLeod, offensive guard Wes Martin, Dalvin Tomlinson, Snacks Tomlinson, defensive tackle, a couple other defensive tackles, Tristan Hill, Maurice Hurst Jr. So they're really trying to beef up that offensive line or the defensive line.
Yep.
Ogbenini Okoronkwo. I think that's pretty close.
Sure.
Defensive end. He's actually a pretty good player. They added him from the Houston Texans. Wide receiver Marquise Goodwin and safety Juan Thornhill. So Those are all the players that they added from other teams. They re-signed Ethan Pokic, their center. Jordan, dude, these names, I swear. Sloan Taki, Jordan Kunasink, and Anthony Walker Jr. Those are all linebackers. So really focusing on the defensive side of the ball. Really nothing. I think the biggest thing that they did was they traded for Elijah Moore before the actual NFL draft. And that's going to have a pretty big impact on this receiving room. There's a lot of guys. I think it's a very talented receiving room for sure. I can definitely get on board with that. What are your thoughts on the offseason additions that they've made?
I thought it was pretty solid. I don't think it was anything that's like horrible or bad. I think it was good. I think it was good resigning. It's their linebacker core. I thought they did pretty well last year. Sometimes when I'm driving around, like I will listen to a Browns game, unfortunately. And those are the names I normally hear. So, I don't think it's anything earth shattering or anything, or anything bad by any means. I just think they have a solid team. And I think with the addition of Elijah Moore, believe it or not, I think that's going to really help them in the passing game.
Yeah, definitely. So a few players that they lost really quickly: Jacoby Brissett, their backup starting quarterback, tight end Farrell Brown, defensive tackle Taven Bryan, linebacker Jermaine Carter, Jadeveon Clowney. He hasn't signed with anybody yet, so he might be back. Tay Davis, linebacker, guard Hajay Froholt, safety Ronnie Harrelson, offensive tackle Chris Hubbard, running back Kareem Hunt. Now Kareem also hasn't re-signed anywhere else, so he could be back as well. Blocking tight end Jesse James, that's all he did anyway. Running back Dearness Johnson is gone as well, which is interesting. Nick Chubb is the lone man here right now.
He really is
crazy. Linebacker Deion Jones, linebacker Reggie Ragland, defensive end Stephen Weatherly, cornerback Greedy Williams. This was a big one. He's one of those guys you talked about that can never stay healthy, but he goes to the Eagles. So, dude, the rich just keep on getting richer. It's crazy.
They do.
And then Chase Winovich, defensive end as well. So, again, some defensive players, some defensive stars on the offense. For the most part, losing some of the running backs hurts a little bit, but I think it just kinda...
I think the big one that hurts is Dearness Johnson. I really think he could do. I think he was the best of both worlds for I think he was a mixture of Kareem Hunt and Chubb. I mean he wasn't that great of a running back, but I felt he was good enough to spell Nick Chubb. With Kareem Hunt, I think the team wanted him off the team, like 2 years ago.
Right.
But for whatever reason, they couldn't trade him, so he's off the team for nothing. So,
right.
I feel the biggest loss is Jacoby Brissett.
I agree.
Personally.
I agree, and we'll talk about the quarterback here in just a minute. But I'm with you. Potentially, it could be massive. So stick around. We'll talk about the quarterbacks here in just 1 minute. They also did trade for Zadarius Smith. See, this is why we do these recaps. Yes. I actually forgot about this myself. So they traded Minnesota for Zadarius Smith. Again, just really trying to shore up that defensive line around Myles Garrett. And this defensive line is no joke, man. It's going to be destructive. Their cornerbacks, whether they can stay healthy or not, that's, their secondary is a question mark, but man, that front is going to be nasty.
Agreed.
Now, their draft, this is where it was kind of interesting. So they didn't have their first 3 picks. They had traded all of them at this point in time. Their first overall selection was in round 3, pick number 74, Cedric Tillman. Now, this was somebody that a lot of people were excited about, kind of rising on going into the actual draft. He ends up going in the 3rd round, decent draft capital to a team that, needs weapons. I like this a lot. I don't love it for the short term, but we'll get there when we talk about the wide receivers here in a minute. Saiki Ika, defensive tackle out of Baylor in the 3rd round. DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle out of OSU in round 4.
Love it.
Now, there was some rumors that he had some, off the field personality issues, and that's why he kind of fell down. But There were people talking about taking this guy in the first round.
First round, yes.
This dude, is this the guy that's like 8 feet tall?
He's 6'8", like almost 375. He's a mountain of a man, and I think I'm really excited to see him on the field.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he doesn't have real personality, if guys don't want to work out at the, if they don't want to do things a certain way, these draft scouts just get their panties in a bunch for no reason sometimes. So I think that there's definitely a lot of talent there. Now, whether or not he works out, that's another question. 4th round, Isaiah McGuire, defensive end out of Missouri. 5th round, this one is, again, we'll talk about the quarterbacks here in just 1 minute, but Dorian Thompson-Robinson, quarterback out of UCLA. Also in the 5th round, Cameron Mitchell, cornerback out of Northwestern, and then finished off the draft with Luke Whippler, center out of OSU again. So doubling up on the O-line from Ohio State. So, yeah, well, let's just jump right into it. So I think the offensive line is going to be really good still. I think it was good last year, and it's not looking like it's going to change really at all. Both of those guys we just talked about are going to be depth pieces, so they're not even projected to be starters, so you'll love to see that. And that's where the quarterback really is going to be interesting. So right now they've got Deshaun Watson, Joshua Dobbs, Kellen Mond, and DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Watson, obviously, should be the focal point. They paid him a lot of money, and if he doesn't return to form, so obviously the ideal situation is Deshaun Watson is what we thought he would be coming over here, what he was with Houston, right? It's not entirely guaranteed, but he was gone for a couple years with all the off-the-field stuff, so it's entirely possible he was just trying to get back into the shake of things, right? The schedule of everything, and he just wasn't trying as hard because they were eliminated from playoffs, and it didn't really mean a ton for him, right? So maybe this year he'll be a lot better. If not, we saw what Joshua Dobbs can do last year with Tennessee. It's not good. Kellen Mond, I also don't think is very good. And DTR, people were kind of rising on him in the draft. At the end, he has a lot of potential. He could be a massive stash for Dynasty. What are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I do agree with it's the DTR take. I think he's interesting. I think he could do a lot of different gadget things for them. I'm not sure how. I mean, he played at UCLA, so I didn't really watch a lot of their tape because with them being out west, and then they also had Chip Kelly as their coach, so he does a lot of gimmicky things, anyways. And he was more of a runner, run first than a thrower,
right?
So I think they've really bet their future on Deshaun Watson, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Right. Morally standing, I don't know how good that is for them either, but that's neither here nor there at this point. So, it's going to be really interesting. And, he's with him signing that massive contract, it's going to be interesting to see how the money falls, if there's any money that they can cut eventually or
well, it's all fully guaranteed, right? So it's gonna be tough.
That is true.
It's gonna be tough.
It's all fully guaranteed. So it's really they really put themselves in a interesting situation.
Yep, for sure.
So I think it's hard to to put all your eggs in one basket for a guy who didn't play for 2 years up to that point, and he was
playing at Hall of Fame level before that, right?
But he was utter garbage last year, Calvin. I
agree. I'm just saying. I know. He's still young, and again, you have to wonder how much he really cared. He came back in week 13. So at that point, when it's a tough road to playoffs at that point anyway, and you're still rusty, like you got to wonder if his heart was really in it. Maybe he was just trying. He could have been treating it like training camp. You know what I mean? So
I know
it's possible, but obviously we're all kind of thinking that Deshaun Watson will get back to form. But you got to be ready to pivot pretty quickly if it's not. Yeah, you do. If he doesn't, man, because it's not going to be pretty. Not going to be pretty at all.
No, it's not.
All right, now running backs, we still got Nick Chubb. Again, he's kind of here on an island. They've got Demetric Felton still, who is kind of an interesting stash. Jerome Ford as well. John Kelly, Hassan Hall, Nate McCrary. Not anybody really that exciting.
No.
Nick Chubb, I think he's going to have a fantastic year. Now, Deshaun Watson just does not typically pass it off to the running back very often, but that's not Nick Chubb's game anyway. So I think he's going to finish top 12
True.
as he always does.
Well, I would hope so, but I know the splits with Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson were very glaring with Nick Chubb,
Right,
and
right.
and the offense as a whole didn't do as well. Like they were trying to
Right.
throw Deshaun Watson in like he was Watson of old,
Right.
and he wasn't anywhere near that, and their whole team suffered.
Right. And you got to wonder too, again, so this is the problem, right? We don't know the context behind it because we don't know what Kevin Stefanski was thinking, right? Maybe he did that because he wanted to just get Deshaun Watson as many pass attempts as possible, right? And knowing he would be bad, like even if Deshaun Watson sucks, we're just going to keep him going until he kind of shakes some of that rust off. So we're not going to use Nick Chubb. Everyone's going to use that split as saying, oh, well, Nick Chubb's going to be bad. But it's entirely possible that they just game planned it that way specifically because Watson was coming off that long stretch, right? So we don't know that. I get the fears with it. I do understand that. But that's the thing. Like, Kevin Stefanski's not an idiot. We saw what he did when Jacoby Brissett was out there, right? So I think that Nick Chubb should be just fine. I think he should be more than capable, and he's one of the best running backs in the league, so he's going to use him.
Yeah.
Pass catchers. So looking at tight end, David Njoku is the only one that's worth talking about here. He had a pretty good stretch of time with Deshaun Watson last year. He was averaging about 6 targets a game during Watson's return, which is not bad at all. So you like to see that. And Watson always kind of had a propensity of throwing to the tight end in the red zone. So there's a lot of potential for David Njoku. Now, again, David Njoku is another guy like Irv Smith, who we were talking about with the Bengals, right? If you haven't checked that video out, go check that one out. But he's not someone that you can usually rely on for health. And that's kind of the concern. But last year, he played 14 games and had 80 targets. Now, granted, he had a lot of targets with Jacoby Brissett, but once Watson came back, he saw a slight downturn in his average of targets, but it was still pretty high. It was still up there in terms of tight end. So 80 targets, you'll love to see that for a tight end.
Yes.
Now, the wide receivers, obviously these are the toughest ones to evaluate. You've got Amari Cooper, you've got Elijah Moore, you've got Donovan Peoples-Jones, you've got Cedric Tillman. There's a lot of guys. David Bell, who a lot of people were high on. I don't really trust much of David Bell, to be honest with you, especially with what he did last year. So to me, it comes down to a three-man race between Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think those are going to be your top 3, right? And they, again, just like we talked about it a little bit with the Ravens, and we're just kind of referencing some other videos, get some more context on that. But I think Amari Cooper is your intermediate specialist, right? He's a route running specialist. Elijah Moore is going to be your slot guy, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be your intermediate to deep threat type of guy. So who is going to be the most valuable for fantasy? It's hard to say. It really is. I think it's going to be Amari Cooper, but I would not be shocked if it was Elijah Moore. I would not be shocked if it was Donovan Peoples-Jones. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I think it's going to be Amari Cooper. I think he's the best one of the bunch.
I agree. Yes.
I think Donovan Peoples-Jones, he has a lot of talent. I saw a lot of him. Like he actually switched his college recruitment from Ohio State to Michigan.
Right.
5-star recruit. It was yeah. He was a 5-star recruit. Like he didn't do a lot at Michigan. But he does have a lot of talent. And the same with Elijah Moore. Like they're both talented. I think it's going to be interesting to see which one of those two is the number 2 behind Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
I do feel that Cedric Tillman could be something, but he's a rookie. I think he's more like he's the big bodied wide receiver,
So my thoughts on Tillman are Donovan Peoples-Jones is going into a contract year, if I remember right.
Yes.
Amari Cooper, I think next year he's cuttable. His contract is pretty hefty. But next year they could either rework it or cut him completely for very little money. So I think Cedric Tillman is the backup plan, and this is very smart drafting, which the Browns have been pretty good about drafting the last couple of years.
Yes,
They fill holes early, right? And that's why you think that they have one of the best rosters in the NFL because they do this kind of stuff. I think Cedric Tillman in 2024 is going to have a massive role. And he gets to just kind of chill this year, right? He's going to get to learn from guys like Amari Cooper, who are very, very talented. Elijah Moore gets the chance to step up a little bit more. But I would not be shocked if next year they're probably going to bring back either Amari Cooper or Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't know which one. If I had to guess, though, I'd probably say Donovan Peoples-Jones will be back, and it's going to be Tillman, Jones, and Elijah Moore. So Tillman, to me, is more of the Amari Cooper type of player. That's why I like him at the end of the second round. I think that there's a lot of value next year, but yeah, in 2023, I think there's almost nothing for him.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the Browns roster. Again, we're going to see. I don't really know what this defense is going to look like. Defensive front should be a lot better, but secondary might be.
I believe defense as a whole is going to be a lot better.
Sure.
Like they they got some undrafted free agents in like Ronnie Hickman and Tanner McAllister from a decent Ohio State defense. Like I did watch a lot of Ronnie Hickman, and I think he's a very good run stopper, and he's pretty decent in coverage. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these guys translate into the NFL, and see if they can stay on the field.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, any last thoughts on the Browns here?
Nope.
All right, so that is the full recap of the 2023 Browns offseason. Again, if you're watching this on Spotify, I'm putting the video up on Spotify, so you actually get the video on there. So hopefully you guys like that. Just for these ones, I'm going to be doing that. Normally, the longer ones, it has problems uploading to Spotify, but for the shorter ones, it works really well. So let us know your thoughts. Again, check us out on YouTube as well, Dynasty After Dark YouTube channel. While you're there, again, please just subscribe to the video, or subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment. Just helps with the algorithm, gets it out there to more people. We appreciate you guys checking these out. Again, if we haven't got to your team yet, it's going to be coming, or go check out some of the other teams that we've put out to this point. So thank you guys so much for joining us this time, and until next time, have a good night.